All right, hello everyone. Welcome to part 2 in setting up your Android development environment. Hopefully you already have the prerequisites taken care of, which is having a good computer and then installing the Java JDK. So assuming you have all those things, let's move forward. Come down here to the installing the Android SDK. And here we're going to pull down a bundle, and what it has inside of it is the Eclipse IDE and the Android SDK, which has all the tools you need for pulling down the APIs, for debugging, all sorts of great little tools in between. So what's really nice is Google recently bundled all this stuff together in one place. Before you had to separately go and download the Eclipse IDE, then you had to go pull the SDK, and then you had to set it all up together. So now it's all kind of set up for one very nice step. So what you want to do is click on this Android developers website, and depending on what platform you are, it'll populate this with Windows, Mac, or Linux. Simply click on that button, and then we're going to agree to the terms, select which operating system, if it's 32 or 64-bit, and then what I do right here is, rather than left click, is right click on it, and I like to click Save Link As, and that's because rather than having it show up in my downloads folder, I really like to know exactly where this folder is located, because I often will use Eclipse, and often I want to access all the tools provided by the SDK. So rather than putting it there, I like to put it directly on the C drive. C drive is my go-to place for things that are really important and I use very often. So as you can see here, I already have a folder called ADT. That's what I've done with this zip folder once I have downloaded it and then extracted it. So go ahead and download this. It might take some time. Put it on the C drive or somewhere you can easily remember. Once you get it there, then go ahead and extract it once again to the C drive, and then just to make things simple, I just rename it ADT, Android Developer Tools. Kind of easy to remember. So pause the video and go ahead and download and extract that folder, and resume when you've done that. So I'm going to assume you've done that now. So we're going to go to the place where you've extracted the folder, and we're going to come inside whatever you've named the folder. And as you can see here, there's a few things set up here. There's the Eclipse folder, and this is where we're going to find the Eclipse executable for running the IDE. And then there's also all these SDK things, tools, sources, etc. Something important to note about Eclipse is you can use it for just regular Java development, C, C++, anything that you want to know. First off, let's start by launching Eclipse. So click on the Eclipse folder, and then you're going to come down here and click on this Eclipse icon. Something that's important to note is with Eclipse, it's not something that actually gets installed into your computer. So if you're on a Mac, it's not going to show up in your applications. If you're on Windows, it's not going to show up under your programs. It's just a file that you launch. It launches this Java program, and whenever you're done with Eclipse, all you need to do is go and delete this Eclipse folder, and you've uninstalled Eclipse. So as you can see here, I already have a sample project, but this is what Eclipse looks like. Now let's go back to the instructions, and they mention make sure, oh sorry, we skipped a few steps. If you already have Eclipse installed and want to add SDK functionality, you can follow the instructions for installing the Eclipse ADT plugin. So if you already have Eclipse installed and you just want to get the plugin, you can come here and pull this. I recommend going ahead and actually installing this software site, because once the ADT gets updated, rather than having to get errors and figure out what's going on, if it's included in Eclipse, it'll tell you there's an update available. So go ahead and copy this URL, go back to Eclipse, and it gives you directions right here. Start Eclipse, then select Help, Install New Software, click Add, and then in the repository dialog that appears, enter ADT plugin. So going back to Eclipse, we're just going to follow those instructions, clicking help, install new software, and all you need to do is click this add button right here. You're going to type in ADT plugin, just like it mentions. Paste that URL in there and say OK. And next you can click both of these boxes and you can click next down here, and it's going to check if there's anything new. See, it's mentioning a lot of these things have already been installed, so if you have the latest, you might not need to install anything, but just keep this in the back of your head for what you have for your installed software site. So maybe in the future, if you get an error, if it's already saved, you can just kind of click on it and click next, and it'll go see if there's updates and get those for you. So may or may not need to do that if you're pulling down the latest ADT bundle. You probably won't need to do this, but if you have already tried Android in the past, you probably should go and update it. So we've knocked out that step. Now let's come back here, and it says take note of where you've installed the Android SDK. Something that the SDK provides is something known as ADB, Android Debugging Bridge, and that provides you with a lot of tools for interacting with your emulator or device. There's a really helpful tool called Logcat, which you can use for printing out logging messages and displaying them into a terminal. So let's take the time right now to go to the SDK folder and find where the ADB program is located, and let's add that to our path. So we're going to do what we did in part 1, but this time with the Android SDK. So go to where you installed your bundle, and then click on SDK folder, and then inside of here there's going to be platform tools, and if you look right there is the ADB tool. So once again, we need to add this to our path. So Mac and Linux users, you'll have to go back to that file that either you created or you used. Windows users, once again, we're going to click the start button, right click on computer, click properties, we're going to click advanced system settings, environment variables, come down and find path, then we're going to edit, and then once again make sure you have a semicolon at the very end of the string, paste the URI for our platform tools folder, put a semicolon to cap it off at the end, accept everything, and then once again to test if you've actually succeeded in adding it to your path, open up a terminal. As I mentioned, if you already had one that was previously opened, you need to close it because it's pointing to an old path. And then now, once you reopen it, we type in ADB, and we get a slew of messages for what ADB supports. So we've successfully added it to our path, so that's great. Let's go back, because they were in the direction specifically talking about the SDK. So we've added a step here to these instructions, but that's okay. So let's go back to platform tools. They were just wanting to know particularly where the SDK folder was located. So just map that in your head, and what it's saying to do now is in the Android SDK Manager window, make sure the SDK path points to your location. If not, we need to go to the preferences in Eclipse and let it know where things are located. So you need to follow this instructions, which is in Eclipse, click Window, Preferences, Android, and then update your location. So let's do that right now. Go to Eclipse, I'm going to hit Window, Preferences, brings up this box right here. We just click on the word Android, and as you can see right here, it's asking for where the SDK location is. Simply click the Browse button and navigate to where you've unzipped that folder. So mine's on the C drive, ADT, and inside of it, just click the SDK folder and say OK, and it should appear right there. Hit Apply and OK, and now everyone knows where the SDK is located, and that'll make Eclipse happy. So following along, in these directions for setting up the Kindle Fire, steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 deal particularly with how to get special tools for the Kindle Fire, We don't need to do that since we're just going to be doing regular Android development. So we're going to skip to 8, and part of 8 is a little bloated to support things for the Kindle Fire. So we're going to kind of take some of this with a grain of salt, and I'll show you what you need to do. So in Eclipse, we're going to go to Window and SDK, Android SDK Manager. And we need to click on this is because although we have Eclipse and although we have the SDK Manager, we still need to download the APIs so the Android projects know about new source code, etc., what's supported by the ATI. In addition, there's some tools, there's sample projects, and there's also drivers which are needed. So when you come into this window, you're probably going to see a lot of these, we'll say uninstalled. Since I've already gone through the process, I have a lot of things installed. And so what I recommend you do is come in here and click Tools, click API 17, 16, 15, and 14. And this will cover all the APIs back to Ice Cream Sandwich, which is about 2 years old now. And something important to note is that these APIs are really, really big. So if you want, you can go back and pull every single API level since the beginning of Android, but you're going to be sitting for a very long time in downloading. So this is something you might want to set up and then go leave, go have lunch, go read a book, etc., etc. So if you want, pull down everything, but you're going to be downloading for a really long time. Even just these 4 right here are going to take some time. So in addition, starting back over again, we want Tools, API 17 through 14, and then come down here and select Extras. And this is important because you're going to be getting the Google USB driver, which you're going to need USB drivers if you're using actual Android devices. And some people think that just because their phone connects to their computer and they can use the mass storage that their drivers are working, but that's not correct. If you're using a Google device, you'll need this Google USB driver in order to communicate with the computer and properly install applications. If you're using a non-Google Experience device, you'll have to go to the manufacturer and get the actual driver for it. Their websites are usually pretty good about it. So once you've checked everything, then you're going to want to click Install Packages. And as I mentioned, this process is going to take some time. So pause the video and we'll continue once you've downloaded everything. So let's go back to our instructions. We should be right about here. When you click Install, it'll bring up a window similar to this with all the packages you want, and then just click the Accept All and click the Install, and then you'll be sitting there for quite some time. And once you've gotten through this, you should have successfully pulled down the Android SDK, pulled down Eclipse, and have downloaded all the APIs, and you should be ready for developing in Android. So follow on to the next part for how to set up a device emulator, and I'll see you there. Thanks, bye.